What's up, AJ?
Hey, Meny, how are you?
Good, good. Just prepping my bio. Need to alter something over here. So you caught me prepping, basically. So do you know, is he gonna call in?
Yeah, so he has a unique link just like you. And then someone on his team also has a unique link, and he'll be using that to share his slides as he goes through. And then Paul will be on as well. And I'm just going to stay on too, just to monitor to make sure just the back end is all running smoothly. But it's you, Jeffrey, and Paul, and then someone on Jeffrey's team.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, cool. I'm going to just prep the bio a little bit over here. It's just kind of like he's
perfect
over the place. So
yeah,
make it short and sweet. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, it's a pleasure to have the Los Angeles County Assessor, Mr. Jefrey Prang, on our session today. For those of you who knows Mr. Prang, he's the assessor, the county assessor since 2014, so that's his second term. Originally from born in Detroit and raised in Michigan. The assessor. The assessor is a state board. The assessor is a licensed appraiser and an executive committee member of the California Assessors Association, the CAA. Okay. Oh, Mr. Prang.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Good, good. I'm just prepping your bio.
How's my camera look?
Oh, look perfect. And you're in the office. Oh, wait, is it the office or is it your home office?
Yeah, we're at the office.
Oh, very cool.
Somebody's got to stay here to keep the ship running.
The piece, I know, yeah. Same thing over here. That's my the West Side office in Wilshire, right over here.
Yeah, most of our people are working from home, so social distancing makes itself really easily.
Yeah, and we just finished to revise. We did like reopening guidelines for the staff effective this coming Monday to be in the office and start to kind of like psychologically, mentally, physically, whatever, spiritually, to get back into that mind, and then the 18th is, unless I don't know, mayor or whoever's gonna say like, hey, you guys just start to open businesses or whatever, maybe gonna do it before, but we ready basically. So
right. Well, good. Well, thank you for including me again today. This
of course,
hopefully we'll have something interesting to say. I saw the city of Culver City is promulgated some new rules for realtors that seemed pretty helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like a domino effect. Calabasas also did a couple of things at one point, and see how that's gonna go. And now we have this. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the CLEAR policy. It's like a Clear Corporation policy. Oh, here's Paul as well.
Hey,
Paul.
How are you?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Good. Thank you very much for doing this.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
I don't, unlike my normal schedule where I'm out at events 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week. Now I'm looking forward to these Zoom meetings. It's the only time I get to see anybody other than staff.
I love your brown panel virtual background. It looks like you're actually at the office.
Yes, it does. It makes me look like I'm really paying attention to what's going on, and I'm there and
yeah,
fighting away for the people.
You can ask people if they like your Zoom background.
Well, at least the good thing about this camera position the way it is, it doesn't see the top of my desk.
Yeah, I know. In some cases, what people are wearing like under the desk, right? Yeah. Shorts or whatever.
That's the joke now, right? Yeah.
Did you see that? Was it NBC reporter over the weekend who was reporting from home, and he panned back and showed that he wasn't wearing any pants.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole Zoom documentary. Jeff, one question: how thorough? Excuse me. You want me to go over your bio?
Not at all. you just say I'm the assessor. I've been doing it since 2014, and
Sure,
that
sure,
should be sufficient.
Okay, I'm just going to mention a couple of things. Okay, just, I just wasn't sure if you want me to mention all of it, but
I wouldn't. I don't even. Rather than doing a bio, why don't you just talk a little bit more about how I've worked with you and the realtors? That's a little bit more.
Sure.
Nobody wants to hear what boards and commissions I sat on and what all my jobs were. And I think what they'd probably rather hear is that that we work together through the advisory board, through the Association of Realtors, and try to do things to work with one another for our mutual advantage.
Okay, perfect. That's fine. Just going to open with you. It's your second term as a assessor of the Los Angeles County, and since 2014. And yeah, cool. Okay.
I do like to emphasize now and again that I used to be a mosquito commissioner.
I thought they're going to say that you used to play the trombone. So
I did.
Are people afraid of the assessor like a taxing body? Like, oh.
Well, they are, because nobody knows what I do. They all think I'm a taxing body, and I'm not. So they're probably tired of hearing my jokes telling people that I don't collect taxes, that the tax collector collects taxes.
No, it's a good line, actually.
But they still cut. But nobody knows the difference, and they all think they call me the tax assessor. So they like to joke about their tax bills, and sometimes they get nasty emails complaining that they didn't get their bill, and I said, well, I'm not responsible for bills. Well,
it's certainly a vital part of what we do, and I know that you play an important part in it, and we're doing everything we can to support the safe getting back to business and the sort of movement and liquidity of a market.
Well, we're looking. I'm sure you are, as well as we are, looking forward to getting back to some sense of normalcy, because the market's going to take a big hit this year, and our workload's going to go way up with declines in value and other types of changes to the to the market. So. But I did understand that the governor seems like he's ready to start loosening the reins bit by bit, open up some rural counties, start allowing some low impact businesses, particularly real estate, should be easier to open up again. We didn't see we don't have any information to judge what's happened. We could assume what's happened based on the decline in activity, but we don't have anything to measure that by just yet.
Right. And I'm looking at, go ahead. I'm looking at a bunch.
No, I was going to say, if it's okay, I'm just going to introduce Jeff, because we already have quite a bit amount of people, this amount of people on the call. Just a quick introduction, because people think, oh, it's already started. What did I miss? I see, Paul Morris on the call. I see the Assessor Jefrey Prang. So whoever joined us just now, thank you so much. And we have a pleasure to have the Los Angeles County Assessor, Mr. Jefrey Prang, as a guest on our call today, here with the For Living and Paul Morris. For those of you who knows, Jefrey Prang has been the assessor since 2014, so that's his second term. And personally, I have the pleasure to serve on the advisory committee since, well, actually this year with the assessor. And Jeff been just a huge asset to us realtors, in not just in the openness and the approach of how he's communicating and always accessible, and really care about what we do and how we do things, and the information that both Jefrey Prang and his office are giving us, also by his incredible job in once again in a very short period of time, changed this entire department completely. And for those of you who knows, it's not an easy task to change department. So just a shout out to, once again to you, Assessor, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Meny. It's great to be with you and your colleagues once again. And thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today, give you a little bit of update on things from our office, and share with you kind of what we view as taking place in the market and where it will be going in the wake of the coronavirus. I've had the opportunity to speak to a couple of your offices, Meny, and I apologize for that if some of this information is repeated, but it seems like there's always a few new people who are joining on, and it's helpful to give a little bit of additional background about my office before I get into some of the more substantive matters. So I think I spoke just a couple of weeks ago on Facebook Live, and so we thought we'd do this again and see if I could amplify on a couple of other points that we didn't go into at that time. Let me start just by giving you a little bit of information about our office and something Meny and I and Paul were talking about offline, and that is the first thing about what my office does and what it does not do. I do not collect taxes. The tax collector collects taxes. Different person. His name is Keith Knox. His formal title is Treasurer and Tax Collector. I was inundated when the COVID first came up by people asking about their property taxes, which were due on April the 10th, wondering whether or not we're going to extend the deadline. Again, since I don't collect taxes, I have nothing to do with the deadline, but we did try to share as much information with people because they usually come to us first. If you have not heard, the property tax deadline, which is established by state law, so local officials couldn't change it, but the local officials do have the authority to waive late penalties, which has the same net effect as a delay in the deadline. And treasurer tax collectors throughout California are going to be much more generous and liberal in extending or in waiving property tax deadlines for those who are impacted by COVID-19. It does require that you go on the treasurer's website and fill out an application requesting a waiver of those penalties. And I think as of Monday, about 15,000 taxpayers had requested those delays. Couple quick things about my office. I run the largest local property assessment agency in the United States. We have about 1,400 employees, about a $200 million budget. We're responsible for assessing more than 2.4 million parcels annually, valued, at least valued up through COVID, at $1.7 trillion. That $1.7 trillion in raw value generates about $17 billion in property taxes, which is the primary source of funding for a whole lot of public services such as schools, public hospitals, all the doctors and nurses that we've been cheering for recently, as well as police, fire, parks, libraries, et cetera. So the way the system kind of works is there's two ways work flows into our office. One is from the registrar. When you buy a property and you record a deed, that deed is then transferred to us by the registrar recorder. The other way it comes to us is through building permits, new construction, which are usually pulled with the local municipality. Cities are required to provide us copies of all their building permits. My appraisers then look at the permits, they look at the deeds, they determine if it's reassessable. If it is reassessable, we establish the new market value for them and enroll that value. We then take that data and we give it to a department called the Auditor Controller. You probably are not familiar with it, but the Auditor Controller is actually the one that tells you how much you owe. They're the ones who apply the tax rates, not only for property taxes, but all those special assessments that show up on your property tax bill. They then transfer that data to the treasurer tax collector. They're the one that sends you the bill. They're the ones you mail your money to, and they're the ones that will process the property taxes that were due on April the 10th. My office has been experiencing a number of impacts, and in terms of our the resources that we have available, in terms of our personnel. However, the county of LA and all other cities and schools are really relying heavily on the assessor's office because sales taxes have essentially dried up, which are one of the two main primary sources of revenue for local jurisdictions. So property taxes are really important right now to create as much stability as possible to ensure that there is sufficient revenue to provide those services that we all rely upon. I can tell you right now that about 85 to 95% of my employees on any given day are working from home. We lost some production time in making that transition. We're also losing some production time simply because people are using home-based technology as opposed to some of the more sophisticated equipment we have at the office. But we are doing the best that we can do to keep our work moving along, even despite all the troubles due to COVID. There is a special type of property tax where I do have a bigger role in, and that's property taxes for businesses, which we call business personal property. That is your furniture, your equipment, and your machinery. So you not only pay property taxes on real property, land and improvements, but also on business property. What's the annual business property statement is due on May the 7th. That's the filing, not necessarily the payment of the taxes. Any business that has $5,000 in aggregate valued equipment or more is required to file the business property statement. If you fail to file, you could be subject to a 10% penalty. So we've been getting a lot of inquiries about those businesses that are going to be unable to file by May 7th and whether or not the penalties will be waived. I don't have the authority to waive that penalty. I've been working with the Board of Equalization and the legislature to see if they can grant assessors more liberty in waiving penalties for those impacted by COVID. At the moment, we don't have that authority. That decision is made by the Assessment Appeals Board. However, unless new information comes to my attention, it's my intent to recommend to the Assessment Appeals Board a waiver of penalties for anybody impacted by COVID when it comes to their personal property filings. So one of the big questions that I've been getting with increasing frequency is from property owners who are asking, what do they do if property loses value during this crisis? Under California law, if your property declines in value, you may be entitled to a reduction in your property taxes. It's a little bit complicated, so let me walk you through a couple of steps to explain how it works. So we value property every year on what's called the lien date. The lien date is January the 1st. So the tax bill that you're going to get in October is based on the value of your property on January 1st, 2020. So if the market changes as it is right now, after January the 20th, that will not be reflected in your bill later this year. That will be reflected on the lien date next year, next January 1st, 2021. And if there was a reduction in value, you will realize those property tax savings next year. A decline in value also can be kind of confusing. It does not mean, it's a decline of your assessed value, not necessarily your market value. So let me use an example. If you purchased your home for $500,000, then it went up to $1 million in January this year. Then we have this coronavirus crisis. The property loses value and is now worth only $600,000. Well, you won't get a property tax break under a decline in value because your property is still worth more than it was assessed at when you purchased it at $500,000. If the value goes below $500,000, that's when you would get a property tax break. So we will look at property throughout the entirety of LA County once we're able to get back to work to determine if there are areas where properties went down in wholesale numbers. Otherwise, you can file what's called a decline in value application from starting on July 2nd through November 30th of this year, and we will process those. But again, it'll be for the we'll be looking toward the lien date to determine value of January 1st of next year. I talked about penalty waivers already. So there's a couple other things that I wanted to emphasize that are hopefully useful to you as you're getting back to work. One of them is I wanted to call your attention again. I've talked about these in the past about some of the property tax savings programs that are available. There's programs for homeowners, for seniors, for the disabled, for nonprofits. The most important one is the homeowners exemption. Everybody who owns a home and lives there as their primary residence automatically qualifies for the homeowners exemption. About a third of LA County residents do not apply for the homeowners exemption, primarily because they don't know about it. So I'd certainly encourage you, if you don't have that exemption on your property, that you apply. And it's also not a bad marketing tool to use when you get back to work. People are going to be very concerned about money, and telling them how to save a little bit of money on their property taxes for the homeowners exemption might be a good way to begin a conversation. It's not a lot of money, but you only have to apply once, then that will apply to your annual tax base for as long as you own the property. And that's all available on my website at assessor.lacounty.gov. Another more somber topic I wanted to talk about was the death of a property owner. What do you do? This gets more people in trouble than virtually any other issue that comes into my office. When somebody who owns property passes away, there are things that you need to do, and if they're not done, it could result in a reassessment. We're putting together a complete guide that will be that we're going to post online about what some of the steps are, what the most important things to do during such a traumatic time. But right now, let me just give you a couple highlights that are important that you might want to share with your clients. First, after a property owner dies, the heirs or the estate must notify my office within 150 days of the death by filing a form called the change in ownership, death of real property owner. If you fail to submit that to our office, you could be subject to a penalty. We usually don't apply those penalties, but they are a possibility. The bigger issue is if the property owner intends to give that property to their children or their grandchildren, it's required that you it's even more important that you submit that form. And as well, you need to file what's called a parent-to-child exclusion, a Proposition 58, which tells us your plan to give your property to your children, which would protect them from having the property reassessed. Failure to do either one of these puts your property at risk of being reassessed, and you'll get a supplemental tax bill, and then you'll call my office mad saying, I inherited property from my parents and you shouldn't be reassessing my property. But the two things that tell us that happened are the filing of the death of real property owner form, as well as the Prop 58. Otherwise, it'll just look like a transfer to our system. I want to call your attention again to resources that we put especially for realtors on our website. My website, which is assessor.lacounty.gov, has a special page for realtors and real estate professionals. We put a lot of information on there that we are hoping that will help educate you to be better professionals, but also information that will help you in your marketing efforts to keep your client base and your prospective clients informed about programs and services that might be valuable to them. We also invite you to sign up for our real estate professionals newsletter. We'll send a monthly update with information we hope that will be useful to you and to your clients. Also, going back to property taxes for a second, Because there's so much confusion in the property tax chain about which office handles what, my partners in the property tax administration created a joint website. It's the treasurer tax collector, the assessor, and the auditor controller. We have a website called propertytax.lacounty.gov. We call it the property tax portal. If you don't know which department you need to go to, this is the place to start, and it will more or less ask you some questions and direct you to the right department so that you can save yourself some time and get to the right people with the answers. And again, that's propertytax.lacounty.gov. Another big issue that comes up with a lot of frequency deals with the issue of trusts and LLCs, and this kind of relates to the as well to the death of a property owner. I understand that in business in particular, ownership options can be complicated. Oftentimes, for estate planning, trusts may be involved, and while it can be a very useful tool, they are disproportionate in their tendency to get people in trouble and result in supplemental tax bill. For example, unless certain specific procedures are followed, properties are reassessed when a change occurs. So there's a number of common mistakes that we want to urge you to avoid when putting your property into a trust, taking property out of a trust, which is common during refinancing. And we've created a quick guide to trust and tax savings. We provided a copy of that to Meny so he can distribute that to all of you. And if you don't get from him, it's on our website. And it's part of a larger endeavor to help the public navigate the world of estate planning and the complicated issues dealing with property tax administration on the government side. So every year, the biggest responsibility of my office is to assess all the properties in LA County and create what's called the assessment roll. It's really the inventory of all taxable property in the county. It also frequently serves as an important economic indicator. Because of this COVID crisis, we expect to see a major impact on the assessment roll this year, although it's just, as I mentioned, it's just too early for us to tell what that impact will be. Let me tell you a little bit about where we were leading into COVID, and we'll walk through what we expect to come next. The assessment roll since 2011 has seen a steady increase in value in property, leading up to a 6.2% growth in 2019 in property values countywide. Although property values continued to grow last year, we did note, as many of you may have seen, that there was a slowdown in sales, although continued positive growth in values. Typically, the biggest contributors to the change in the assessment roll year to year is the sale and transfer of real estate, as well as new construction. I did on the graph that you should be able to see on the screen includes a table with some figures demonstrating some specific growth for 2019 prior to COVID-19. To highlight, Beverly Hills grew at 6.7%, a little bit higher than the county average. Culver City at 8.8%. El Segundo at 8.6%. Inglewood and the stadium and all the construction and development that's adjacent to the stadium saw them grow at a whopping 25.7%. LA grew very strong. The city as a whole grew at 6.8%. Rolling Hills Estates at 6.3%, and West Hollywood at over 11%. West Side cities usually tend to be grow at a faster rate than the county average. Just before the safe-at-home measures were put into place in March, home sales and prices remained high as mortgage interest rates continue to drive up demand. The median sales price in March in LA County was $638,000 for a single-family home. City of LA, it was $817,000, and we are expecting that there will be changes here once we start getting more data post-COVID. Of course, the COVID response has also impacted consumer confidence. For the week ending April 19th, we have data which demonstrates that home buyers in LA and Orange counties signed sales contracts for nearly 60% fewer homes than the same period in 2019. Zillow also reports that the number of homes on the market during the week that ended April 19th fell nearly 31% from the year earlier. And then the last thing I want to talk about was something I think we've discussed in the past. That's a measure that's going to be on the ballot that will have a significant impact on the real estate in California should it pass. It's called the split assessment roll. It is qualified for the ballot in November. The proposal will, they call it the split roll because it will essentially split the way that we assess property. It'll assess commercial industrial properties differently than the way that we currently assess residential properties. Residential property, which includes apartments and condominiums, and multifamily housing, will continue to be assessed as they are now under Proposition 13. They will be reassessed upon a transfer of ownership or new construction. However, if adopted, this measure will require that all commercial and industrial properties be reassessed on an annual basis or on a cyclical basis no more than every 3 years to market value. So if you bought commercial property 30 years ago, you would be seeing a dramatic increase in your assessment should this measure pass. It is a constitutional amendment. It requires only a simple majority to pass in November, and will be the first significant constitutional amendment to Prop 13 since it was adopted in 1978. The California Legislative Analyst's Office estimates that the change would generate an additional $7 to $12 billion in additional property taxes statewide, although I'm sure they're going to be changing that number should in the wake of COVID. However, the advocates for the measure are hoping that those dollars will be allocated substantially to public education and public services. We estimate that LA County would probably collect about 25 to 30% of that $7 to $12 billion for local budgets. Should the measure pass, the implementation of this measure paints a much far less rosy picture than the additional $3 billion for county services and schools. And that's my department will be primarily will be principally responsible for implementing a split roll, and it's going to cause some really difficult logistical and resource challenges for us. Currently, on any given year, between 6,000 and 10,000 commercial industrial properties are reassessed. However, there's about 180,000 commercial industrial properties in the entire county, of which about 140,000 of them we believe would fall under the parameters of split roll. This means that even if the properties were reassessed every 3 years, it would still be about a tenfold annual increase in the amount of commercial industrial workload that my appraisers would be required to manage. To meet this challenge, I would need to hire about 700 additional staff members on top of the 1,400 I have now. I would need 5 of those 700 employees. 500 would need to be commercial industrial appraisers. And to put this in perspective, of the 1,400 employees that we have now, about 700 of them are appraisers. Now, in a good year, I can hire about 60 appraisers. It's very labor intensive to hire these folks, and it usually takes 5 years minimum to train a commercial industrial appraiser. So the split roll measure gives me 24 months to implement this measure. I cannot hire 500 people and give them 5 years training within 2 years. So it will require us to come up with a number of strategies that will all be inefficient and cumbersome to meet the terms of the measure. We'll probably stop reassessing residential property. We'll probably do that all by computer generated models. It's not very accurate, so it will result in a lot of appeals. We'll have to put appraisers into commercial industrial appraisal even though they're not ready, which will result in a lot of errors, which will generate even more appeals. So we've been working with other assessors and the Board of Equalization to see if there's other ways we can hire the number of people that we'll need and try to get them trained outside of our office, maybe through the community college system, to see if we can try to meet the needs of the personnel that will be required to implement this should it passes. We're also expecting that for those businesses that have been had the same owners for a very long time, if the property taxes go up at a dramatic level, it may have an impact on tenants, and it may have an impact on the overall property value if it becomes difficult to maintain rents where they had been prior to the implementation of a split roll. That could actually have an impact on the market as well, and we'll be watching those changes very carefully should it be adopted. So I think I've spoken for a long time. Usually there's a lot of questions I'm happy to answer, but I did want to again thank Meny, Paul, and all of you for your time and attention, and again your invitation to speak to you today. I'm happy to open it up and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you. Thanks, Meny.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jeff. That was a very thorough presentation, and it's always current. And it doesn't matter where we're going to present it and under which circumstances. There's always some things need to be addressed. Paul.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to again say thank you very much. We know running the largest assessor's office in the United States is a huge undertaking, and for you to take the time to chat with us and our realtors is tremendous. And this way, our folks can take some of this information direct from you and talk to their clients and folks. So we really appreciate that effort.
Thank you. And we're putting lots of stuff on our website. I encourage everybody to check it out. And if there's stuff that's on there that you want to clip and paste and share with your clients, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to get maybe a copy of the presentation, or if not, in any case, we're going to share the website. It's very thorough. As I mentioned at the beginning, what Mr. Prang did, he really amazing job to refurbish or reinvent the online accessibility and the information. So everything is much easier as well to find online. Go ahead, sorry.
We'll be happy to send you a copy of the presentation.
Thank you. There are a few questions about assessed properties. How
Right.
the value might go up or might decrease.
Moving my camera, so
That's cool.
so I can see that.
Still see you.
So,
I like your Zoom background.
Yeah. So there's some questions on the chat room. Says, does property held in a family trust qualify for homeowner's exemption? The answer is yes, as long as that is your primary residence. There's Prop 59. I think you mean Prop 58. Does it need to be filed after the person dies or before that? I believe that I should know the answer to that question, and I don't. But I believe that it can be done prior to the death of the property owner. I think the property owner can do that to set things up for their heirs in advance. Next question, is there a list of actions or things that would trigger a reassessment? The things that trigger reassessment are a change in ownership. So here's one that happens a lot with if there's a death in the family and there's like 4 children or 2 children, whatever the number is, that inherit the property, and they inherit in equal portions, but one of them wants to sell their portion to a sibling. That will trigger reassessment, a proportional reassessment, but that's one example. The only time you can give property to a family member is parent to child, or in some cases, parent to grandchild. But anytime you change that deed and who owns it, you will be subject to reassessment. If you put your property into a trust is a separate legal entity, so it really is a change in ownership, but there are provisions in the law that allow us to avoid a reassessment. but it's kind of a precision matter, and you really need to make sure you're doing it properly. Otherwise, you can get reassessed, which is why we put together that handout that Meny has. And we are finding that sometimes even those that you go to get expert advice, whether it be real estate attorneys or escrow people, we find that sometimes they give bad information on trusts. So it's good to be really extra careful on those issues. Other things that cause reassessment is new construction. If you add a second story, if you build an ADU, if you install a new pool, if you add heating and air conditioning where you didn't have it before, that is not, those will trigger a reassessment for that new construction. And when you do new construction, we don't reassess the entire property, just the square footage, which is new. And I should say things that are not reassessable. If you replace your roof, if you replace your heating and air conditioning, if you remodel your kitchen, typically those things are not reassessable if you're just upgrading what's there. If you tear down walls and make a 4-bedroom home into a 2-bedroom home, that's likely to trigger a minor reassessment. But generally the rule of thumb on a reassessment based on new construction is, are you adding square footage? So hopefully that will answer your question. Where do I find the homeowner's exemption form? It's on our website, assessor.lacounty.gov. On the lower left-hand side, there's a button that says lower my taxes. And there are all the different property tax saving programs where you can get a form and send it in. Applying for the property tax payment, which is due on April the 10th, you can apply for a waiver of the late penalty. You need to go to the Treasurer Tax Collector's website. That is ttc.lacounty.gov. And right there on the splash page, it'll provide a link to apply for a late penalty waiver. And you just need to, I don't know what the standards are for qualifying, but you just needed to indicate that you weren't able to pay on time due to COVID. And I think they're going to have a pretty low bar to qualify for those penalty waivers. When is the right time to fill out a form for property ownership in a trust for no reassessment? I don't know that I have an answer to that one, but shoot me an email, and I'll have one of my special assistants get back with you. My email is jprang@assessor.lacounty.gov, and I'll type that in here in a minute. Who decides if my tax rate goes up? Your tax rates don't go up. Your tax rate is 1%. It's 1% forever. The only times that'll change is if you do new construction. There is an annual cost of living adjustment. It's a maximum of 2%. I doubt there'll be 2% this year because of COVID, but the most your property taxes would ever change would be 2% a year, but your assessed value never changes. It is, if you bought your property at $500,000, you can project the maximum taxes you'll pay through the life of the property by just adding 2% a year, and that's the maximum. One thing that does confuse people, though, is when you get your tax bill, it's this whole laundry list of taxes, but those are not property taxes. There's only one of them. It's called the ad valorem tax, which is your property tax. The rest are all special assessments. And this confuses people, and it confuses them with me because it oftentimes has the word assessment in it, but those have nothing to do with my office. They may be an assessment for transportation, for water, for vector control, for school bonds. But government consolidates a lot of these fees on the annual property tax bill. They do that just so you don't have to get 15 different bills from 15 different agencies. And sometimes when your tax bill goes way up, it's not your property taxes that went up, it's one of those other special assessments that probably went up. If you use a Prop 8, decline in value due to a disaster. So there is, I think there's two issues in this question. They're asking about reduction in property taxes. I discussed one of them already. We call it decline in value. It's also known as a Proposition 8. This is what happens when there's been a change to the market value of your property, when we'll lower that assessment. And if that assessment is lower than your original assessment, you'll get a temporary break in your property taxes. There's another one, there's a natural disaster property tax break called misfortune and calamity, and that's due to flood, fire, earthquake, or something where your property is physically damaged. And we've been exploring with the Board of Equalization to see if an economic impact would qualify as a misfortune and calamity. Unfortunately, the law is written pretty narrowly, and it doesn't give us the ability to apply economic impacts to that type of tax break. What's the turnaround on reassessment of new construction or add-ons? Ideally, we try to get that work done within 12 months within our fiscal years, which starts July 1st to June 30th. Unfortunately, we've been short-staffed for a number of years. We're going to be even shorter staffed because there's a hiring freeze in the county. We typically will carry over about 20,000 to 30,000 new construction permits from year to the following fiscal year because we don't have enough bodies to carry it. It depends on how complicated the new construction permit is. If it's enclosed porch, might be a little bit faster than if it's a major commercial construction project. We're happy to track down. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to track those down. But I can tell you to expect further delays due to COVID-19 in the processing of a lot of our work, including new construction.
And Jeff, actually to deviate to that, I want to ask you maybe as a closing statement or to address something.
Sure.
It's kind of like related, non-related, but you kind of touched it, which was brilliant. How do you? It's kind of like a two-part question. Number one, you kind of already touched it in sense of how the reopening of once again one of the largest offices, assessor offices in the country. How you guys do you have a game plan? And of course you're under the county rules and what have you. And the second thing is, do you see any change in the work environment? Maybe yours, maybe in general.
Yeah, we as I mentioned, we've got 85 to 95% of our employees working from home, and I think we're probably going to see a significant number of them working from home for the foreseeable future. And we're going to study that carefully because it could be that that might be the way we're going to operate going forward. We were already struggling with this issue prior to COVID. My employees are government employees. They're not. We hope that we compensate them well, but owning a home on a government salary is more and more difficult in LA County. So I have a huge number of my employees that live as far away as Hemet and Fontana and Rancho Cucamonga to try to find affordable housing. So it became difficult to attract employees. So we're going to try to take the lessons learned from this teleworking to see if we can attract and maintain employees by offering teleworking as just one of the realities that we're going to have to live with. There's going to be significant challenges on our department because of this COVID. County revenues and all government revenues are way down. Sales taxes, which are one of the two biggest sources of funding for local government, is all but dried up. And if I don't, my department, in many ways, we're essentially bean counters. And if I don't have enough people to count the beans, then that means there's going to be less property taxes. So I'm already down about 60 appraisers. There's a hiring freeze, so every month that goes by, I lose more and have fewer people to do the work. And at the end of the year, if I don't have enough people to do the work, that means customer service goes down and those processing of new construction permits are delayed. And we don't have as complete an assessment role, which means there's fewer dollars in the county coffers.
And I mean, thank you for sharing, because once again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you bring different mindset to the game as well. And I want, make sure that people understand how, we're all in this together. So right. First of all, not to blame you for taxes, because it's nothing to do with you.
Right.
And secondly, that, we're all in this together, and the recovery is going to be pretty much like a worldwide effort. So thank you for being creative and be very entrepreneurial.
My pleasure, and thank you for again inviting me back and giving me the opportunity to share this information. I put my my email address into the chat room. Feel free to follow up with me with any questions that you might have, and me and my entire staff are always here to help you any way we can.
It's really a testament to your commitment to public service. You already have all the stuff. The number of files on Jeffrey's desk does not diminish by talking to us. He's got a ton of stuff to do. So I appreciate you taking the time to communicate directly with our team. We really appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jefrey Prang, the LA County Assessor, and Paul Morris with Fort David KW. Thank you so much. And whoever's watching us, thank you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.